It is now 5:30 on March 11, Thursday. I would like to call the meeting to order for the Justice, Health, and Welfare Committee meeting. The purpose of this meeting is to discuss the Teneo report. At this time, may I have the clerk please call the roll?
Yes, ma'am. Councilmember Webb,
Present.
Councilmember Days,
Here.
Councilmember Fitch,
Here.
Councilmember Clancy. Madam Chair, you have a quorum.
Thank you. And just note that I am aware that Councilmember Clancy will not be available today. I would like to also admit in her absence, she sent formal correspondence that will be admitted into the official journal for this meeting. So even though she's not here, her value and her inputs are valued, and we want to take note of them. In addition to her statement, there are questions that she's presented forth, and I'll make sure that they get addressed throughout today. At this time, I want to make sure that we address and introduce all of our participants on the call with us today. Thank you all for joining me and joining the committee today for the first Justice, Health, and Welfare Committee meeting for 2021. It is my pleasure and honor to serve as the chair of the committee, and I'm appreciative of you taking out the time today to join us. The purpose of today's meeting is to make sure that we level set in the knowledge and information that we've learned from the Teneo report. I believe that the parties involved today are all stakeholders in this report. This Teneo report is very important to how we change the future of policing in county. So what I would like to do is to make sure that you know this will be an ongoing discussion. This is not a one and done situation here. We will meet on a quarterly basis to discuss the impacts of the priorities that the stakeholders here will be pursuing. We will also take time to see how those impacts and whether those recommendations from the Teneo report have been taken into consideration. So I just want to set and level set the playing field here that this is an ongoing conversation, a quarterly conversation for the most part, and everyone will have a voice at the table so we can work together in order to address some of the concerns for our communities. With that being shared, I would like to take a time to introduce the participants in the meeting today. We have Chief Mary Borton from the St. Louis County Police Department. We have Lieutenant Colonel Troy Doyle, representing and served as the liaison for the St. Louis County Executive Office as the liaison for the Teneo report. We also have the pleasure to have us also today is Officer or Commander Norman Mann, representing the interest and feedback from the Diversity and Inclusion Unit. We also have with us today Ms. Officer Shanette Hall. Did I pronounce your name correctly? Great. I practiced it today. So Officer Shanette Hall, who will be here representing and showing feedback from recruiting. And we also have Mr. Justin Nichols. Thank you for joining us today, sir. I know it was above and beyond for you to make accommodations, so thank you. He also represents the Diversity and Inclusion Unit. And we have Mr. Matt, I pressed on Mr. Matthew, or is it Matt?
Matt's good. It's Crecilius.
Matt Casilius. Yes, I even have it spelled out, sir. So again, you representing the Human Resource Executive Director, if I'm correct?
No, I'm with the Fraternal Order of Police.
Thank you for that correction, sir. The Fraternal Order of Police. Thank you, sir. Did I miss anyone on the call? I also want to recognize our committee members Madam Chair for the St. Louis County Council, Ms. Rita Days. I also have fellow councilman member Tim Fitch. And joining us also is Councilmember Kelly Dunaway. At this time, the meeting order will go as follows. When we will have speakers come before us. When you come before us, I would like for you to introduce yourselves again in your own words and share with us the connection with yourself and the Teneo report in this for this meeting. And you have to excuse me because this is my first show, so I want to make sure I know everyone's role and how they're connected to this entity. At any time if there are questions, please don't hesitate to ask your questions. And with that being shared, we will go ahead and get started. We will first start with Lieutenant Colonel Troy Doyle, who will give us an overview of the Teneo report.
All right, Madam Chair, members of the committee, good evening. First, I'd like to thank you all for inviting me here this evening to share with you some of the key findings of the Teneo Group report and to speak on the topic that I'm most passionate about, which is the St. Louis County Police Department. Again, by way of background, the Teneo Group is a global advisory firm that provides service in the area of communications, crisis management, investor relations, and executive searches. The company was founded in 2011 and is headquartered out of the city of New York. In 2016, the company started what they call a risk advisory section, headed up by retired New York Commissioner William Bratton. One of the functions of the risk advisory section is to conduct a top-to-bottom review of law enforcement agencies on the following categories: cultural diagnostics, which essentially examines the culture of an organization; resource allocations, which currently, again, evaluate the resources that we have and are we using them properly; technology, again, same thing, seeing if we're using technology properly and what we need and what we don't have; crime control strategies, which essentially are crime plans and ComStat meetings. And the other areas that they look at is communications and public information, collaboration, recruitment and hiring, academy training, policies and procedures, community engagement, equity issues, promotional processes, just to name a few. The Teneo Group has conducted many of these analyses both within the states and internationally, believe it or not. Some of their clients include the city of Baltimore, Boston, Detroit, Oakland, Philadelphia, Trenton, New Jersey, and countries such as Hungary and South America. As far as my involvement with the report, last summer, County Executive Sam Page appointed me as the liaison to the Teneo Group for the duration of the assessment process. Given my familiarity and long established professional relationship with municipal leaders and community stakeholders, I was able to connect the Teneo assessors with many of the individuals in the community. The team conducted approximately 80 individual interviews, either in person or virtual. And it's important to note that most of the individuals interviewed were police department personnel. The reason I say that's important is because they're getting a cross-reference from both young, older, black, white, male, female, a cross-section of all the police officers under the police department. So that's why I think the report is important, because it's reflecting those individuals. The report, however, was made public in December of last year and is quite extensive. So for the sake of time, I won't cover it in its whole entirety. However, I would like to take this opportunity to share with you all some key findings that I believe are vital in maintaining the public's trust and confidence. While providing a safe environment for the citizens to live, work, and play are our priorities, we must foster a work environment that values diversity, inclusivity, that demonstrates equity at every opportunity. Not only is it the right thing to do, it enhances our ability to fulfill our commitment to serve and protect. As we all know, the 24-hour news cycles has served as magnifying glasses to the issues we have in policing. Whether you're in Los Angeles, Baltimore, New York, Baton Rouge, Louisville, Minneapolis, or right here at home, police department leadership cannot afford to have a passive response. We must face things head on, and the first step is acknowledging that the problem exists. That said, in terms of acknowledging problems, what I'm about to say next to this committee is extremely important. Systematic racism exists within the St. Louis County Police Department. As much as it pains me to say that, it must be publicly stated in order for us to begin the healing process and start the process of rebuilding in our communities. It is also important to note that systemic racism did not start with the appointment of Chief Barton. Systemic racism existed long before the appointment of Chief Barton. I would go back as far as 1955 when the police department was first established. That said, we have a major opportunity here for change and progress since the Teneo group has done most of the legwork for us. With that in mind, I'd like to expand the areas in the report listed as immediate areas of opportunity for improvement, which is crime control strategies, tools and technology, and resource allocations. And let's start with the staffing end of that. So we talk about staffing. When we start looking at the North County precinct, and that's the precinct that I'm most familiar with because that's where I spent the majority of my career at. In years past, the precinct was staffed with based off of population density. And I think we've gotten to a point now that we can't look at that. You know, it used to be like you have an officer per every 1,000 residents or so on. Now we have to start looking at staffing on the police department in regards to call volume. And the reason that's important is because we all talk about community engagement and, you know, how do we build trust and build on our current relationships in the community. That's very difficult to do when you're responding from radio call to radio call. The North County precinct is one of the busiest precincts that we have. And those officers don't have the opportunity to stop, engage, get out their car, and interact with citizens because the allotted manpower don't allow them to do so, and nor does the call volume. In addition to that, Proposition P was passed several years ago. As you all are aware, it provided for new precincts and additional personnel. And more importantly, it asked for the addition of 2-man cars in all the precincts. As of this date, we don't have the 2-man cars in the precinct. That should be somewhat concerning to everybody on this call and the community as a whole. Our voters overwhelmingly several years ago passed Proposition P by the vote of 63% of St. Louis County residents. And they were promised to get certain things that they are not receiving at this particular point, and the 2-man cars are part of it. Again, if we were able to beef manpower up in regards to staffing, specifically in the North County precinct with 2-man cars, you could afford the opportunity for officers to get out, engage in the community more. Again, let's talk about our Crimes Against Persons unit. As you all know, and you continue to read the papers, just like I do each and every day, violent crime is on the rise. Our Crimes Against Persons unit need additional people in there. Again, sometimes minor assaults or sometimes cannot be followed up on because the officers in the precinct do not have the time to, take themselves out of service to do follow-ups because of the call volume up there. I would task this committee to look at in the future as far as budget requests to staffing our Crimes Against Persons detectives or bureau with more detectives. I'm gonna move on to talk about cultural diagnostics with a heavy emphasis on the human resource department. Implicit bias training, which is extremely important. And after, August of 2014, after the Michael Brown deal, that term became very popular. Which it should have been. However, over the years, we have relegated implicit bias training to what we call virtual training. I'm quite sure that everybody on this call will agree with me when it comes to, implicit bias training, cultural awareness type of training. That shouldn't be relegated to a video produced by somebody and the officers are able to click buttons. That should require in-person classroom instructions to involve engagement with our officers, with the instructors, and one-on-one engagement in order for us to move forward. I'd also like to direct your attention to page 13 of the report, specifically page 4, the second sentence. Again, I'm not going in any random order. These are just highlights. It specifically reads that Teneo requested certain demographic information about hiring, promotion processes several times, but was never provided this useful data. Why is that important? Little is known of the efforts to identify barriers in employment or address same. As indicated numerous times throughout the Teneo report, that certain demographic information is not collected. I sent numerous emails to our HR director regarding receiving this type of information. However, I was met with no response. This should be concerning not only to me, but it should be concerning to this committee. The reason you should be concerned because it doesn't allow for transparency. And if we can't be transparent in-house, how do we expect to be transparent out-house? Inconsistent NBQ process, not best qualified. It's the NBQ is the acronym. It speaks on how certain individuals make it to the interview while others have been disqualified for the same issues. Again, if we're not provided with the demographic information and the NBQ information, how do we best determine who is best qualified and who's not best qualified if that information is not shared amongst us all? In addition to that, I've been fortunate to be on the hiring interviews over the past 7 years. And to this day, I'm not sure how it's determined who is not best qualified. I have kept my notes over the years, and I have interviewed individuals who have made disparaging remarks about people of color, and outside of my objections to these individuals being hired, they were still hired. As far as background investigators, our background investigators do a decent job. However, I employ not only our human resource department, but the department as a whole to get our background investigators educated in the area of cultural competency, just cultural awareness. And the reason I'm bringing it up, and I give you an example, is that I sat on an interview board a couple years ago where an individual grew up in Meacham Park. I'm not 100% or totally familiar with Meacham Park, but apparently there's a set of railroad tracks that run through Meacham Park. The individual talked about how he was part of a gang, but he really wasn't part of the gang. And let me explain. He lived on one side of the railroad tracks, which was, I guess, governed by a group of individuals. And on the other side of the railroad tracks was another group of individuals who didn't like the other ones. This individual wasn't a gang member. However, he had to be part of something, because had he not been part of something, he would have been attacked not only by the people where he lived at, but obviously by the individuals on the other side. So he was part of that. But cultural competency tells me that that individual really wasn't a gang member. It was a matter of survival for that individual. And if our background investigators had that type of cultural knowledge, we can make better decisions in regards to our selection process. And I'll give you one more example in regards to assaults. Anybody who ever grew up, especially in the inner city, I grew up in the 5900 block of Wabata, oftentimes you were forced to fight. And sometimes at the age of 17 and 18 years old, that may require you to be arrested if law enforcement was to respond. I think we have to look at those type of cases very carefully in regards to eliminating individuals, because again, in some of these instances or some of these issues, especially in those communities, it's just a matter of survival. And I don't think the individual should be punished in that regard. Somewhere in the report, it talks about the relationship between the FOP and ESOP. I will let those organizations talk about that relationship, but I'm happy to report there has been much progress in that area. I had conversations with both James Morgan and Matt Cresilius, and both have indicated that they are getting along and moving forward, which speaks volumes. Those are some of the highlights. I realize you have a host of others that need to be interviewed, and would like to conclude with the following. We need to be looking critically at everything we do. Long established practices, procedures, and habits of mind are the most suspect. I'm not sure where I heard this at, but if you sit on a stone for 3 years, you would get used to it. We're at a critical point in our region as it relates to law enforcement, and we are not in any moral position for any magic tricks or band-aid approaches. Our communities are tired, frustrated, and to be frank, flat out exhausted. Our police officers want to police our communities and catch bad guys. Our communities want to be respected, and our employees want to be treated fair. Hopefully we use this Teneo report to move the agency forward, because now is not the time to be sitting on that stone. Thank you for this opportunity to speak this evening, and I'll stick around for questions.
Thank you, Lieutenant Colonel Doyle. I greatly appreciate your overview. And as you said, this report is very massive, and I appreciate you giving us that 40,000-foot view. I appreciate you also sticking around for questions, because we'll probably have plenty of those. So thank you again. At this time, we would like to give Chief Mary Borton an opportunity to address the audience today and give feedback. Chief Borton, before you begin your overview, would you please introduce those that are in the room with you? I can't really see them that closely, and so I kind of need you to guide me through that.
Certainly. I have to my right, Deputy Chief Gregory. To my left, I have Mr. Becker from Human Resources. And over, I don't even know if you can see him, over here is Lieutenant Hampton, who's in charge of planning and analysis. And then we have a computer person, because our computer is kind of going in and out. So, Chris, the computer wizard. I'm sorry, do you want me to go ahead?
Thank you, Chief Borton. Yes, please go ahead.
First off, thank you very much, Troy. That was an excellent overview of the report. I really appreciate all the time and effort that you put into being the liaison with Teneo. And you addressed a lot of the things I was going to talk about. So thank you for saving me the time of talking about them. One of the things I would like to explain is, after the Teneo report was given to the police department, I took the kind of approach that I needed to include the division commanders of the department in really looking at the information that was brought out. So that report was given to each of the 5 division commanders and was asked for input. And specifically, we broke the report down to, I believe, 97 recommendations by Teneo. And they fit into those categories that Lieutenant Colonel Doyle already mentioned, you know, the cultural competencies, the technology, all of those. And we really looked at it as to which ones we were already working on prior to the report, which ones were immediate, you know, short-term, long-term. And we kind of came up with and again, we also put this report down through command staff to get input and ideas from all the other commanders. And we came together to really look at these and kind of codify them according to, again, those immediate, short and long-term goals, and identify priorities. And then we further broke it down into saying, okay, how do we best look at these priorities and how do we put them into perspective? And we looked at our strategic plan that we began in 2018 that ends in 2022. And we looked at the core competencies of that strategic plan and how did the recommendations and the ideas given to us by Teneo fit into those current strategic plans, core competencies that we already have. And we addressed this by including what we consider the most immediate priorities in there. And as we spoke of today, this particular document that we've been working on has not yet been presented to the board. of police commissioners due to the fact that we did not have a February meeting and there's been some changes in the board. So that this document is being presented to them on the board meeting this coming Tuesday. And because they have not yet seen it, I do not believe it is fair or appropriate for me to discuss this in depth since it has not been discussed with them yet. But suffice it to say that all of the items mentioned by Lieutenant Colonel Doyle are included in us moving forward and addressing these, specifically all the things he spoke about relating to human resources, looking at our policies and procedures, looking at promotion and hiring and the relationship between Ethical Society and the FOP, which I'm happy to say, and thank you, Troy, for bringing this up, that it has improved somewhat. We're moving forward, we're making progress in these areas, but again, I really need that this information be presented to the board first about our list of immediate priorities. But I can say overall, our immediate priorities, as Troy already mentioned, would be crime reduction and a coordinated crime strategy here in the department, and really looking at how we address cultural competencies within the police department, how we address diversity, inclusion, and how we really allocate those resources specifically. As Colonel Doyle mentioned, workload analysis based on call volume in the precincts. That's something we've been working on, and I believe the final report made some suggestions. But again, we have to take a serious look at that regarding manpower and the deployment. And again, the things he mentioned about Prop P also. Those are also concerns of ours about the deployment of manpower and the two-man cars and all the things that Prop P promised, but we haven't been able to deliver. So all of this combined went into recommendations of all the command staff and executive command staff here and came together to form these final documents. First, our response to the 97 requests or suggestions, and then the document of how we included this into our strategic plan and identified of the most pressing or priority issues that we want to move forward with immediately, short-term and long-term. So that's how we really addressed this report and took the data and information out of it to really come up with a plan about how we're going to move this forward. And I really would like to say that everyone in executive command staff, and thank you again, Troy, for all your input, and command staff took this report very seriously because we view it as an opportunity to take some of the long-standing issues here and really come up with a plan of how to move forward and address these. And over and over in this report, it talked about updates and policies and procedures. So we have been looking at that. They specifically mentioned use of force. So that report, that policy has been under review. So we took the information they gave us and we attempted to address it most expediently, but specifically as relates to policy change and review and moving forward, developing best practices and policies. So that was another area that we looked at, but there was, as you know, a massive amount of information in this report. And to really break it down into definable blocks of information and really codify it into how we move forward with it was a challenge, but I think that we've gotten it down to where we're going to be able to move forward and how we're going to be able to move forward. And of course, this is a team project for all of command staff and all of executive command staff. And I know based on the passion with which Lieutenant Colonel Doyle talked that he is totally on board with us moving forward and really addressing these things. And he's absolutely right. We have the opportunity here to turn around some long-standing issues and problems in the department. And I really think it's going to be a challenge, but it is a challenge that we have to take to move this police department forward. So I appreciate the opportunity to come before you and share this with you. And like I said, Lieutenant Colonel Doyle hit on most of the really pressing areas, I believe, here in the report. So I'm not going to repeat all that, but again, there are other people here who could probably weigh in better on specific areas. If you have any specific questions about recruitment or promotion or the FOP or ESOP, that they here can speak to that. So I hope that I've answered your question about an overview, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Chief Boynton. I appreciate that synopsis. I do understand, and I do appreciate the professional courtesy of letting me know that you want to present this to the commission board prior to disclosing it here in this committee hearing. The great thing about this cadence or battle rhythm that we're going to have is that you will have another opportunity in 3 months to give us an update and feedback, detailed feedback in your report that you will be presenting to the commission. In addition to the information you're presenting to the commission, I would also ask when you return to this committee hearing that you bring back the tools and also the data that you use to assess progress. So when we talk about the progress in all of the recommendations, I would like to understand what tools you use and how you measured that progress. That will be value added in assessing how beneficial, how much progress was made, understanding what you use to gather your metrics.
Certainly, ma'am.
At this time, yes, ma'am. If there is a participant that is actually in the room with you that would like to address the committee at this time, I will give the floor to your guest as well, whether it's from HR or from your deputy.
Say anything?
Lieutenant Hampton.
Good evening. I'm Carl Becker. I'm the HR director. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. I just want to touch on a few things. I think, Councilwoman Webb, I think you have our org chart and hopefully others have it, but the org chart was a step ahead of quite a bit of Teneo, the Teneo report. Once Chief Barton became chief, she immediately began working on the org chart.
Excuse me, Mr. Becker. Chris, would you bring up the org chart while Mr. Becker speaks, please? You may proceed, Mr. Becker.
Yes, ma'am.
The academy was moved under HR from operational support. And in addition, a new unit was created, the wellness unit, which addresses one of the Teneo concerns about having wellness for officers. And I know the FOP has always championed this, and it's great that Chief Barton was able to get this across the finish line. And we now have a wellness unit staffed by Lieutenant Scott Roach. And of course, the personnel services unit is under the Division of Human Resources, and that's the recruitment and background section and employee services that helps maintain the various day-to-day personnel issues for the police department. We have over 1,300 employees. And the Bureau of Community Engagement is headed up by Captain Mann, who's joined us tonight. And that consists of the Diversity and Inclusion Unit that's commanded by Sergeant Nichols, who's also joined us tonight. And then the Community Outreach Unit, which is, as you can see on the org chart, is quite a bit of units with the school resource officers, about 44 school resource officers across the county. We have the Police Athletic League that engages with kids across the county. We have a cadet program right now with 15 cadets, and we'll be expanding that program very soon. And that's had, over the creation of the cadet program, we've had about a 50% hiring in
Chris, did we lose Chief Barton's?
It's headed up by Officer Ponson, and my goal is to have the Explorer program and posts spread out over the entire county to give kids an opportunity to be exposed to law enforcement, do productive things along with the police officers and help out and be a stepping stone to either the cadet program or full-time employment. Or if they don't become police officers or work for us, they're better citizens because of it. We also have the Citizen Police Academy and then the CAPL Careers and Pathways through Law Enforcement, where
Chief Barton, we are having technical challenges. Can you hear me? I think we lost their connection again.
hopefully in 2021, if not in 2022, we're going to be able to get that program going because it was very beneficial. Most of the students came out of the Jennings School District. Dr. McCoy was very helpful and instrumental in that. And it's a really good program to engage the kids. So those are all the kind of community outreach things that a lot of which Teneo was addressing or suggesting. And we were, like I said, back in May and June when Chief Barton first became chief, we were already on top of that to reorganize the department. Part of the delay was, as with anything, staffing is always
Chief Barton. So we are having, as we all are witnessing, technical difficulties with Chief. Excuse me, Mr. Becker. So we are having challenges with your connection. It keeps going in and out. And so we're getting, we lost them again. So if they come back, I'll give them instructions that we will have to table their conversations and move on. He's talking.
It's a diverse group of background investigators. I'm very proud of them. They work very hard at.
Excuse me, Mr. Becker, can you hear me?
Yes. I
Okay,
can hear
so-
you.
Okay, so we're having technical difficulties. Your connection goes out temporarily, and so we're just getting pieces of your conversation. And so I'm not sure how we can correct that, but I didn't want you to continue on, and we're just getting in and out pieces of your information. So what we will do is see if we can stabilize your connection for a little bit and watch it, and then maybe we can come back to Chief Barton's connection and address the other members in the office with her. Is that fair?
Thank you, ma'am. We have a computer person in here. We're working on it.
Okay, thank you. And that's with that being announced, we want to move on to one of our other guests at this time. Could I have Mr. Norman? Are you still there? Commander Norman or Commander Justin Nichols? Either you can give us feedback concerning the D&I unit.
Sure, I'm Captain Norman Mann. I'm the commander of the Bureau of Community Engagement, which entails community outreach and diversity inclusion, as Mr. Becker specified. I'm about 4 months into my tenure in this assignment, so I am happy that Sergeant Nichols was able to join us tonight, as he has over a year in the D&I unit. So collectively, we should be able to address any questions you have pertaining to the Teneo report. So I'll pass it off to Sergeant Nichols to introduce himself at this time.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Sergeant Justin Nichols, and I am the acting commander for Diversity and Inclusion Unit. I've been with the unit since its inception with Lieutenant Keith Wildhaber, as well as Captain Cox. And just excited to join you tonight and to continue a steady rhythm of communicating and see what inhibitors we have and how we can move forward as far as D&I itself. A lot has been transpired in the last year. I think the biggest challenges thus far that we've had in D&I is just a consistent change, with a change of a chief, a change of a captain, a change of a lieutenant, moving from the office of the chief of police to human resource, and so forth and so on. All of those factors, not including just several assessments, have slowed down progress in my opinion, as far as what we can accomplish. But we're on the right track right now, and we'll move forward as such to make sure that we are changing the culture within our department.
Thank you, Captain Mann and Sergeant Nichols. I appreciate you all joining us today. Again, we want to bring all the stakeholders to the table. And again, I appreciate y'all for joining us. At this time, I would like to go to the representative from the FOP, Mr. Matt.
Good evening, ma'am. Good evening, council members. The Teneo report, obviously, like everyone touched on, was very thorough. There's a lot of findings, a lot of recommendations in there that are purely management oriented. As you know, we are the labor organization, and our focus is on the employees. And the part of the Teneo report that was not only eye-opening but also nice to hear from an outside source, touched on a lot of things that we are continually have been fighting on for years, and will continue to fight on and try to improve, such as transfer processes, selection processes, promotional processes. I mean, this is an ongoing struggle for us, and it's something that we are always constantly trying to address as far as transparency inside the department and fairness in these processes. It's really hard to get into specifically. So, you know, later on when it comes time to questions, I'm open. I'm ready to answer any questions anyone has. So that, I mean, it's, you know, and Colonel Doyle touched on the relationship with the Ethical Society of Police. You know, that was addressed with the Teneo panel during our interviews. So I think that was one of the things. They probably came in with a little preconceived notion and didn't necessarily want to hear what we had to say about it. But, you know, that relationship is, I just talked to Shanette probably 2 days ago about, you know, we have very similar priorities. Our pathways to get those accomplished are very different at times. And that's because we have the collective bargaining process and that legal pathway to try and address our priorities. But overall, that, you know, that relationship is, I'm trying to find the word they used. It's far from open hostility, which is what Teneo classified it as. So again, you know, I'm here to answer questions. The report's just too long and detailed to go through, but I appreciate the invite and ability to be part of the conversation.
Thank you, Officer Madden. We appreciate you making yourself available. As to all of our guests, we do definitely appreciate you showing up and being a part of this conversation. To move forward, we want to give Officer Shanette Hall an opportunity to address the audience.
Yes, good afternoon. Good afternoon, Madam Chair, and then also members of the community. On the behalf of the Ethical Society of Police, I just want to let you all know that all comments are definitely this evening are spoken from myself of being the second vice president of the Society of Police. We definitely appreciate you us to this meeting. It is something that we appreciate for having our voices. Our relationship with the Teneo report is within the report. We were interviewed several times as well. We voiced our concerns about a number of different things. What is interesting is we submitted a call to action letter to Chief Barton and Executive Command, and to also the Board of Police Commissioners. Our call to action letter was submitted December 7th, that was just days before that actually came out, and it was available to the public. It should be noted that several of the things listed in our call to action report were also then again mentioned in the Teneo report. So I just wanted to throw that out there that there's a lot of things, good things that the Ethical Society of Police are calling and asking for. And it is not just a thought that is coming from us, but also from members, several executive commanders and chiefs from around the country share our same concerns. And if I just wanted to share just one thing, one line that kind of stood out to me on the report, it just simply says that in addition to crime and racial equity issues, communication also remains a challenge for the St. Louis County Police Department. It goes on to mirror or continuously say a number of these things throughout the department, and we hold those concerns as well. Our letter was released, like I said, December 7th, and that was something that we mentioned in there as well. And then to kind of just go on and to repeat what Lieutenant Colonel Troy Doyle said, I'm sorry, as well as Mac Racilius, that relationship is not as strained as some may believe between the Ethical Society of Police and the Fraternal Order of Police. We do share a lot of the same concerns on our department, and we've had conversations on how it is that we can together that were facilitated just by the Ethical Society of Police and the Fraternal Order of Police. So I just wanted to go ahead and lay that out there, and like it was said just before me, we're here for any questions, comments, or concerns that I can answer on behalf of the Ethical Society of Police. So thank you.
Thank you, Officer Hall. At this time, it's about 6:15. I want to keep mindful that I want to be respectful of time, but I do want to give Chief Barton, the remaining members in your office, an opportunity to speak if anyone would like to say anything at this time.
Try it again, Chief.
Thanks.
Good evening, Madam Chair, council members. How are you doing today? I just wanted to hit on a couple of things that Colonel Doyle mentioned in his presentation to us. The Prop P money, when they voted, they voted for the two-man cars up in North County. A lot of things that Prop P money was going to, and I'm sure all of you are aware, once we got that Prop P money, it started getting divided everywhere. And nowhere near that we had the money that we thought we were going to have, but we're trying to make as much effort as we can to abide by what the money was for. Another thing that Colonel Doyle mentioned was the 1955, when this department was established, the culture that was established then. And obviously I wasn't on the department at that time. I came on later, but it was established, and it's taking years. It's going to take more years for us to change the culture of this department. I've started seeing it when I came on in 1980, things that were different than prior.
Oh, wow. I thought we had made great progress and we were on a roll. Seems like their connection has difficulties again. Okay.
Again, just to say that we are working on the culture changes that this department needs, and we pull together to try to get that done. I'm sure that we will see some changes in the near future. Thank you.
Thank you, Lieutenant Hampton. Are there any others?
Ms. Weathers, Carl Becker, can you hear me?
Yes, sir, I can hear you.
Okay, I just want to get this in real quick before the technology cuts me out. So for 2020, our overall
So as soon as I start talking, they're going to break back in. And so I'm going to have to ask them to send me some. Told you. Mr. Becker, unfortunately, our connection broke again immediately after you said 2020. So what I'm going to have to ask is if you all can provide me a document or a Word document with those highlights that you want to bring forward. and then we will add that to the actual meeting journal. Would that be fair, sir?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. At this time, I would like to give an opportunity for my colleagues and peers to ask questions that they have prepared and that they would like to address to the panelists today. So at this time, I would like to start with Madam Chair, Ms. Rita Days. Did you have any questions that you would like to present forth to the panel today?
Yes, I do, Madam Chair. I don't want to monopolize the conversation, but I do have several questions that I need to ask, and they're for different people there. And first of all, let me just say that even though we do have the Teneo report, we've had issues like this before. I don't think there's a whole lot of probably issues in this that have not been addressed or have not been brought up earlier in many reports. And so I guess I'm concerned that we have another report here and we have little to no action. I am pleased to know that ESOP and FOP are working better together. That's really a positive for me. But let me start with when we're looking at our applicants, because I had a meeting with the chief and State Representative Kevin Windham, and he presented some dismal number of the employees that you have in the diversity there. We know a lot of this report is about systemic racism in the department. And as I've said earlier, you can't address a problem if you don't think that there is one. So I want to know, what is your process when you have officers that for disqualified for whatever reason they may be? How do you track that? How do you track that with race, with gender, age? How do you do that? And of course, Chief Barton just went blank on me there.
It's HR, and HR is in the room with her as well.
Right, and so they really can't answer this question. Okay, well, let me go to Lieutenant Colonel Doyle. And as the liaison in this report, did you find gathering the information difficult? Was there cooperation? Did you find that we're trying to be as less transparent as possible? I really kind of want to know that, because I think I've said that earlier about the Forward Through Ferguson report. We've done that. We've been there. We know that what the bottom line is on all of that. So tell me about that and your effort to get, when you were interviewed, I guess, and your effort to get information for this report.
I'm sorry. Thank you, Madam Chair. So it's an interesting question. So, and it's probably the part that I'm probably most disturbed about, because I have sent and I have documented several emails in regards to obtaining the demographic information, in which I said I did not receive a response from our HR department, which is very, very disturbing, because again, throughout the whole Teneo report, the central theme here is race issues, diversity, and these things. If I'm a lieutenant colonel on this police department and I'm not able to get demographic information, then how do we, as I mentioned earlier, be transparent to the general public?
So, and your director HR, they're still not there. So this all goes back to HR as well. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Thank you very much. And Madam Chair, if I can go to Mr. Officer Nichols, you are over the DEI department. Is that what I heard you say?
Yes, Madam Chair. I'm the acting commander for diversity and inclusion.
Okay, because we do know that Officer Wildhaber was over that, and somehow, I'm not sure how that happened, but anyway, he's no longer of that. And I was not pleased with how that transfer happened. And we had a situation, he addressed the situation, and then all of a sudden he's no longer there before. And so were you already in the department when he was there?
Yes, myself and Lieutenant Wildhaber were both in the unit. I was in the unit in January of 2020.
Okay, and he came in January as well?
Yes, ma'am.
So see, that would be I guess a question for the chief there, but we can't seem to get that. But I just want to make sure that I knew that you were already in the department before he joined, or did y'all join together at the same time?
I think he may have joined diversity and inclusion maybe 2 weeks before I did in January. I think I came in the middle of January and he came in the beginning of
And was this already a department, or was this a department for the Times?
This was a brand new unit. This was something that was created, I believe, either in December of 2019 or early January of 2020.
Okay, so, okay. All right, thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Excuse me, Madam Chair. Chief Barton is back online, and I think those two questions for HR are very important. So could you address that again, as long as we have a connection?
Yes, I was questioning the operations of how you deal with officers or candidates who were disqualified from the positions. And do you keep track of those in terms of age and gender and the other qualifiers that we have, that race, of course? That's to you, Mr. Becker. Oh,
And we lost them again. So here, we're having these great technical challenges, and so we're going to be creative here. And what I'm going to ask is if Chris, Kevin, or I don't see our legislative assistant Shantae on the line, but capturing these questions, and then we will disseminate these questions out to all of the participants. And what's the beautiful thing about this is, remember, this is an ongoing conversation. So we can ask these questions and you could be prepared when we have the follow-up conversation at the next meeting. Chief Mayor Barton, we're having some great challenges technically with your connection. And so what we decided to do is that we're going to document these questions, and then I'm going to ask your office to provide those feedbacks to those questions, and then we'll add that to the journal, and then you can verbally address them at the at our next meeting in next quarter. Is that fair? I think
she's on mute. She's on mute.
Okay. Chief Barton, if you can hear me, you're on mute and they've gone away. So we're going to stop expending our time directly there. And I'm going to give
Talk directly about that.
Madam Chair, can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am, I can hear you. Can
Okay,
you hear me?
before I lose you, yes, that's perfectly acceptable.
Awesome.
And we're sorry, we're trying to fix the computer problem. We can't seem to fix it. I'm sorry.
I understand. Maybe a workaround is if they can call in directly to the meeting and just be on audio. Chris, do we have that option?
Yes, they do. They need to register in, because if they call in, I'll have no idea which caller they are. The other thing I was going to mention is I have the ability, because we're recording this, as soon as it's over, or as once the recording is posted to WebEx, I can email all of the participants the link to the video, so they can go back and hear the questions live or hear the recording of the video. That may be the fastest way to get them all the questions that the council members have.
Thank you, Chris.
For that option, Chris, that would be phenomenal. So all council members in that are on the call, when we have the questions, even if there's a disconnect, please proceed with your questions so it can be captured in the video and then people can receive it later. Madam Chair, do you have any other questions that you would like to put forth to any other members on the panel?
Not at this time, Madam Chair. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. At this time, I would like to reach out, and he just lost his connection. Councilman Fitch, I was going to ask if he had any questions, but he's lost his connection as well. So we are having.
I think he's there.
I can hear you now, sir.
Yeah, it seems like there's a lot of that going on tonight. So thank you, Madam Chair.
This connection keeps getting bad, and I don't know why.
I will, we heard you, Chris. I will basically ask a couple questions, and it'll be for the chief and her staff, but anticipating she may not be able to answer this, I want Colonel Doyle to weigh in, because it seems like we have his connection. So I went through the report again after the last time we met, and I did count the 97 recommendations, and I put a $ next to all of those that would cost money to implement. And there's quite a few of those. One of the things I highlight with a couple dollar signs is technology, like wireless connection. You know, there's probably ways to fix that, and it's probably got something to do with money. So what I'm interested in, Chief, or Colonel Doyle, whoever gets to answer this, is have you had a chance to go through any of these 97 recommendations, the ones that are going to cost money to address, and come up with any sort of estimate on what it would cost? I think we lost the Chief again. So Colonel Doyle, are you still there?
Yeah, I'm still here, Councilman Fitch. Again, I hate to say this, but probably a question is best addressed by the chief because she's has the overall operations of the county budget.
Okay, that's all right. I thought I'd give it a try. So, Madam Chair, that's the question that I really had for tonight, and wanted to thank you before we lose too many other people for getting this set up and having a real constructive dialogue in this manner, and look forward to our future meetings. So one of the other things that I will see if I could get in with recruiting function, and again, Colonel Doyle, this might be it'll be my last question. I ask this at every police department that I do a CALEA accreditation. I just finished the Colorado Springs Police Department this week, and I asked them the same question. What are you doing in your department to recruit minority members to the department that other agencies aren't doing? I'm familiar with all the standard recruiting methods for minorities, but what are you doing that's different than anyone else? So I'd be curious to know if you guys think you're doing something that's different than anyone else that is successful.
Is that a question for me or?
I don't know if we still have the chief or not, but.
I'm like you, I do a lot of CALEA assessments also. I got one coming up, and I ask that question at every one that I go to. You know, what are you doing helping your minority recruiting? And it just seems to find out that everybody's having the same problem, and they're all trying to work their situation. And I think we're in the same position as trying to do better with our recruiting. So if I learn anything new from them, not a lot, nothing more than what we're doing ourselves, getting out different locations, different universities to try to recruit minorities, including women also. So,
Councilman Fitch, it's Carl Becker. Can you hear me?
I can.
Okay, so
it's not a problem. It's a connection. Yeah.
No, I understand. So one thing I can point out is, and I'd like to say it's original, but in September, we did a Women's Day in Law Enforcement. It was a day-long program at the Academy. All the special operations groups, the helicopter, the Bearcat, we had a police car for traffic stops. There was a training session. There was a meet the chief and other female officers. And I can't say that's an original idea, but it was an idea that was developed by one of our background investigators who got the idea from the Tulsa Police Department. And that event elicited 15 applications and 2 good hires. So that was well worth it. And we're planning other types of events like that for women in law enforcement and also minorities in law enforcement. So those are the kind of positive things that the background investigators, other people in HR are thinking of and trying to think outside the box to address recruiting.
Okay, and since we have you back, I'll ask the question that I didn't get a chance for you to hear before, was the cost of the recommendations in the Teneo report. I would certainly, the council, the only authority we have over the police department is budget. So that's something I think we really need to focus on as well. And not that there's not other important issues, but we absolutely have control of the budget. So I know I would be looking for something from the department. Tell us what you want to implement based on these recommendations and what the cost will be. We're going to have an opportunity here very soon, as President Biden announced today, the America Rescue Plan. St. Louis County is going to get about $193 million. But it's a one-time shot. This isn't something that you would put into salaries because that would be an ongoing expense. So what capital items, and I'm just thinking of the Teneo report where they were critical of the CAD system, how old the CAD system is. And for those that don't know what that is, the computer-aided dispatch system, how old that is, and other technologies such as all of the video equipment and DCI, those things that are in the Teneo report, I would like to see a price tag for what you think it would be to modernize this department when it comes to capital items. So if you could get something like that together with the police board and then let us know what we think that you think that will be. So we will be in a position when this money comes forward from Washington to move in that direction to modernize this department. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Councilman
Fitch, if I can add something to the hiring deal.
Sure.
So again, like you said, there's police agencies across the nation that are struggling with hiring. One of the things that I learned, especially in minority communities, is that as crazy as this sounds, Clayton can be intimidating to some, where you got to find parking and all that. Why not take the process to the community? Why not we take a high school like such as Riverview or Hazelwood and take the facility out for the weekend, a Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, and bring the process to the community? I think we have better results in regards to getting people to apply.
Okay, thank you. Good idea. Chief, you were going to answer about the costs? Oh, we lost her again. Okay. I think, Madam Chair, we should probably move on at this. Oh, she's back. Chief, do you want to address the cost issue?
Can you hear me?
We can now. You're back.
Okay. Yes, that's absolutely doable. Some of those suggestions in there, we already have a cost figure. But I think that if we go through it again and get you a total cost figure of all the technology we would need and all the items we could probably use to modernize the department, that's absolutely doable, and it will be no problem getting you that information.
How long will it, there's quite a few items in here. How long do you think that'll take to get that together?
As far as the cost, quite a few of those we already know the cost. Like the cost for CAD is $2.5 million, which we don't have. So we are trying to look at other financing options to try and pay it off in installments.
Okay. And I would imagine there's quite a few different staffing suggestions in here as well. So I imagine there's going to be some suggestions there. Okay, Madam Chair, I will move on at this point since I think Chief Barton's gone again. So thank you.
Madam Chair?
That we can address with financial means as well. Yes, Councilman Harder.
Yes, thank you, Chairwoman. Couple of things. First off, the first priority should be A, we meet in person, or B, we get this technology situation fixed post haste, like next week. Second thing is this question should go either to Commander Doyle or to the police chiefs, is that, in your opinion, is the Teneo report an accurate reflection to the strengths and weaknesses of the St. Louis County Police Department as it is today? If you can keep your answer brief on that.
No, we're not going to move.
Okay.
Can you hear me? I'm here.
Yeah. My question is, is the Teneo report an accurate reflection of the strengths and weaknesses of the St. Louis County Police Department as this report is written? How about Commander Doyle?
Yes. So as I mentioned earlier during my opening, is that the great thing about the Teneo report, they were able to interview roughly about 80 different individuals within the police department. So I would say it gives a pretty fair accuracy on the perspectives of what's going on in the police department. I think Matt Chrissy has mentioned some things that wasn't as accurate, but I would say 90% of things that are in there was pretty spot on.
What percent you said?
I say roughly over 90% of what was in there was fairly accurate.
Okay. And did you find out anything in this report that you didn't know before?
No, the unfortunate thing is that we've had the Forward Through Ferguson reports, the collaborative review reports, I don't know, you name it. I mean, I think we reported out. I think we're in a point of how about let's go into the action phases of it and no more reports. How about that?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I agree with that. I think we have thousands of binders that are very dusty that sit on shelves and nothing happens. Last question. We all seem to know what has to be done to change the culture of the police department. How do we get this done and get it done fast?
Well, obviously it starts with leadership, and that's including myself. Again, oftentimes when we have racial issues within the police department, and I can't remember, I think it was either FOP or ESOP mentioned it before, but one of the first things we do is send our police officers to that training. How about us, including myself, the leadership, attend these trainings? Because if the officers don't hear it from us, I mean, how do you expect for it to happen? So I think it's the responsibility of the leadership, the executive command staff, the chief, myself, to make sure that the culture of this police department changes.
Okay. Thank you, Commander.
Thank you, Councilman Porter. And just to follow up on that, just a general statement, I think the training that you may mention, Lieutenant Colonel Doyle, is that ongoing or is that a one-time training?
I'm sorry, Madam Chair, which training?
You mentioned that when something happens, you send the officers to training, but maybe the leadership needs to go. Is that like every year that is a renewable training that everyone goes through, or is that just a one-time training?
No, it's a training that we go through every year. However, I'm a bit concerned that it has been, diluted to an online training. And again, as I mentioned earlier, I mean, these are classroom conversations that you need to have a live instructor and interaction amongst the officers and colleagues. One of the greatest things that I think the chief has done is created a program called Courageous Conversations, which gives our officers an opportunity to discuss some of these issues. And I think that's a great thing, because in order for us to move forward, we got to first acknowledge the issues and the concerns and be able to talk through it. I'm not a deer hunter, you know what I'm saying? I got to understand why my colleagues deer hunt. There's things that I do that maybe my colleagues don't do. But again, that's a part of the American way. It's very important that we truly begin to try to understand each other. We might not always agree on everything, but it's extremely important that we at least recognize each other's differences and use that as our advantage as we move forward.
Madam Chair.
Thank you, sir. Does someone else have a question or comment?
Yes, ma'am, Madam Chair.
Yes, ma'am.
One thing that, if you don't mind me answering, and then Councilman Harder, if I can add into that a little bit, from the Ethical Society standpoint of view, we can also echo that we believe that the Teneo report, they do a good job at providing a broad picture of the serious issues that kind of plague our department, right? However, real and perceived fear of retaliation from a number of our officers it's very real and perceived fear that retaliation for speaking out on such topics could hinder appropriate actions and for resolutions to these issues that we have. And so we strongly believe that leadership absolutely has to do a better job with creating an environment where people feel comfortable enough to where they can speak out and speak up for what's right. Because if we don't have officers that feel comfortable, that like they can do that without the fear of being transferred, or the fear of being or the fear of being put into some type of BPS investigation, we kind of will not get as much of an accurate synopsis of what it is that's going on in the department. So we strongly here.
Thank you, Ms. Hall. And some of your comments at the end faded out. And so can you hear my voice, Ms. Hall?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, did you want to say your last statement once, your last sentence again?
No, just so, I mean, that's the strongest part. Like I said, I just wanted to echo that we've had a number of members, even our members, and I'm not sure if Matt Crecilius can state the same thing. They do have a fear of retaliation for speaking out. So we would love for the department and leadership specifically to make sure that they take appropriate steps towards making sure that there is a safe space for them to speak out, because a number of people here fear retaliation from speaking out for what's right and what needs to be done.
Thank you for the transparency. Did anyone else have a comment? Okay, does any other council member?
I'm sorry, can I add?
Yes, sir.
Just in response to Councilman Harder's question, I think Colonel Doyle was pretty accurate with saying the report itself is about 90% accurate. I point out a couple of the things that are, a little off as far as just those relationship issues. There's a couple other things they brought up about what the collective bargaining agreement does and does not allow the bargaining agent to do as far as policy goes. Those issues in the report weren't accurate as stated. But overall, this report was very validating to me personally, and to the organization I represent. A lot of those other reports that we were talking about are very 30,000-foot view, very policing in general, policing in the area. Whether it's regionally or nationally, things that absolutely need to be worked on. This report was very specific in areas that we fought very hard to improve over the years, and things that I mentioned before as far as selection process and transfer process and promotions and frankly how bad some of our policies are. Our complaint review procedure has been under draft. Is supposed to be fixed 14 months ago. We're supposed to start working on that, and that is still in a draft phase. That is the policy that governs the administrative review of our officers and policy violations. It needs to move forward. We need some meaningful dialogue to move those things forward. That's the organizational justice, and that 100% goes to what Officer Hall was saying about retaliation. We've filed a couple of grievances here or there on retaliation issues within inside of the department. But it takes a lot of guts for those officers to come forward because they know they're going to have a black mark on them for a long time because they speak up, because they use their union for what it's for, which is to stand up for them. So those are some very serious issues, and that was probably the best part of this report, was getting into the specifics of policies and things that we've been struggling with for a number of years.
Madam Chair.
Thank you, Matt. I appreciate that. I'm sorry, Madam Chair.
Yeah, I wanted to kind of dive into that as well. And so when you look at transfers and these kinds of things, and I recognize that a lot of these issues that were put in as Councilman Fitch mentioned cost money. Those kinds of things don't cost money. So it seems to me that and which we will be dealing with, I guess, in future meetings. But we need to look at the HR department and see how these things are actually happening. It seems to me that that's where they're coming from. And so if that is the case, that doesn't cost money to address inconsistencies, if you will, in that area. The same thing with Officer Nichols there. that's why I asked that question, and because I needed to know, what are the, I guess you could call it penalties, for speaking out and for saying these kinds of things, and knowing that your department is very, very new there. That means that have not been an emphasis on that department per se, if it's just been there since January. So there has been no, let's just say, effort for diversity, equity, inclusion in the department, if that's just starting. So that's why I mentioned that question. And of course, the chief is gone now, I guess. But those are some of the questions that I'm going to be drilling in the next meeting that we have, because I know that we are, whatever time frame you had, I'm not sure what that is. But those are the kinds of issues that go to community policing and go to your recruitment and going to why people either want to be a police officer or they don't want to be a police officer. And so I think that's important. That's important that we do a deep dive into those kinds of situations. So I appreciate that. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Yes, ma'am. Councilwoman Kelly Dunaway.
Thank you so much, Madam Chair. And thank you so much to everybody for being here today. It's really great to be having this really frank conversation with you. My question's for Matt. Matt, you just said for 14 months, this thing's been sitting on a shelf and retaliation is a huge problem and it keeps people from coming forward. So why is it just sitting, why aren't we doing something? What's the holdup? Why has it just been sitting on a shelf for 14 months?
I don't know. It's in draft phase. The department started working on a new policy on how to deal with internal and external complaints on officers last January. It's gone back and forth between stakeholders inside of the department. I don't know. That unfortunately, we've given our ideas a few times, and it's just sitting there. But this is a direct correlation with morale in the department, and how an officer is treated by their peers in an internal investigation has a dramatic effect on morale. That has a dramatic effect on their interaction with the community if their morale is low. Everything is connected, and that's one of the big areas in the Teneo report. I think that it was just 100% spot on.
So what's the solution then?
Collaboration, a willingness to improve, a willingness to move past the way we've always done it, a willingness to open minds to new ideas. There's a lot of departments across this country who don't have the issues that we have, and I think we have a whole division that is or a whole unit that is dedicated to researching and drafting policies. And I think the original draft came from that unit after weeks and months of research, and nothing was done with it. So it's I really think it's just about open-mindedness and kind of move it into modern policing.
One last question, if that's all right. It's still to Matt, but I'm going to open this up to anybody there because I want to know what's possible. I mean, Matt, you say, we need to move into modern policing. We need to change hearts and minds is what I'm hearing you saying. But if you're trying and you're spending human resource hours doing all this research and writing these reports, and then it just sits on a shelf and nothing ever happens, what's the possibility and what can we do to push things along to become, or to open minds to become a modern police department?
I think at some point it has to come from, it has to come from specifically the police board, management itself. It's, and it's kind of funny. This is the area where the Teneo report says the FOP has the ability to make and change policy, and we don't. Otherwise, we would have, because it's so important to get this done, and it just kind of sits on a shelf.
Madam Councilman, Lieutenant Colonel Gregory, how are you doing? First of all, I appreciate getting the tape of this so that we can hear just about what went on in this meeting. We were cut out on a lot of it. There were a lot of questions asked that we didn't have an opportunity to respond to. So it's going to be beneficial for us to get that tape so that we can respond to some of those things. Some of the things that I have heard sitting here is listening to Matt Crasilius about the complaint review policy that we've been working on. We've gotten to the point where we have so many stakeholders looking over our reviews, making sure that they have some say-so in what we're doing and trying to make it fit for everyone. And that tends to take away time to get that report completed. And that's pretty much where we've been. And yes, there are times when it takes a long time when we have to continue to change to get things done. There was something said that we did hear about retaliation. I was talking to Colonel Doyle today about a complaint that he had in units. And one of the things that he mentioned to me that we're seeing happening now is people stepping up and supporting those people who have harassment complaints. They're standing behind them, and they're willing to speak up about their complaints. We have a policy here where the person complaining about the complaint goes to HR and they talk about their complaint, and they're reassured of the fact that there's no retaliation against them, and this command staff makes sure that that doesn't happen. So we are working on those things. There's a lot of work to be done. Obviously, there's more work to be done. Again, we're going to appreciate getting that tape so that we can hear the questions that we weren't able to hear when other people were speaking about the department. So looking forward to doing that.
Thank you, Lieutenant. All of our guests, it's 4 minutes to the top of the hour. I know everyone has had a long day, but I want to first say thank you. Before I kind of wrap up, Kevin, do we have any public comments?
No, Madam Chair, we do not.
Thank you, sir. So now I just want to kind of bring us to a close, all of our guests, all of the panelists, and all of the council members. I want to say and vulnerable it may have been to hear things that you may not want to hear, but it's been documented for us. This committee hearing is not said some of the same things that we want to improve, that we want to provide better policing to our community. So it seems that we all have the same focus and the same vision. It's how we get there and how we work in collaboration with each other to achieve it. I am going to continue to reach out to you, get familiar with each other, and as Councilman Harder suggested, if the technology doesn't get better, we may need to get to a big conference room where we can all be 6 feet apart, but we're able to talk and complete a full committee conversation. It is value to have each one of you on this call, each stakeholder invested, to make sure everybody knows that their voice is being heard, but not just heard. As Lieutenant Colonel Doyle stated, we don't need another report. I'm new to the job too, Officer Nichols. And this is my binder of reports. The Teneo report, Ferguson moving forward report, the internal report, Ford through Ferguson report. I mean, it just goes on. And I've literally taken the Ferguson report and the Teneo report and compared them, literally read through them and marked them up to say this, and I can draw a line from this recommendation to this recommendation in the Ferguson report. So as Lieutenant Colonel Doyle stated, we don't need another report. Thank you for all the reports. We have enough information now. It's time to take action, and you have to be supportive of each other to do that. In addition to this video, I was prepared with questions too, right? I got pages and pages of questions to share with you. So I will be forwarding those questions to all of the entities on the call, asking for you to respond to those questions in a timely manner, much sooner than the next time we get together. And then we'll be able to make those comments public in the journal as well. This is the beginning. It's a good foundation to start with, but this is definitely not the end. I look forward to seeing each and every one again in 3 months, in the next quarter. In that time, we'll have better technology or face-to-face meeting. We'll have that communication out with the questions, and you can respond in detail. And also, Chief Barton, we'll have that feedback with your detailed priorities and initiatives, since you've had an opportunity to go before the commission board. And we'll invite them too. I know they have a lot going on right now, but we will be inviting them to the table as well. At this time, I thank you for your patience and your sacrifice of joining us tonight and just being tenacious and working through the technical difficulties. I do appreciate each and every one of you. At this time, if there are no other comments or questions.
Quick, can you hear me?
Yeah. Yes, ma'am, I can.
I want to say thank you very much, and just two things to wrap it up. I think that by all of the officers that work here and the command people, that you see we are very serious about this police department and moving it forward. I'm very proud of the people that spoke on here. I know it takes courage to speak up, and quite frankly, we admire that. There are problems here, and we understand that, but I would like this group to work together to try and come up with solutions to the problems and work together in a cooperative nature, positively to move the police department forward. I know there are problems here. We know there are. We're willing to work on them and address them and move this police department forward. That's everyone's goal, working cooperatively in a positive environment and really acknowledging our mistakes as well as our triumphs. And I really, really appreciate the opportunity, ma'am, and I can't be thankful enough. So thank you, all of the people that work with me, for coming forward and spending your time and educating us and enlightening the committee. So thank you very much, ma'am.
Thank you, Chief Barton. If there are no other comments or no other questions.
Move to adjourn. Are you willing to, are you ready for that?
Yes, ma'am. So I would like to have a motion to adjourn the meeting. It is 7:01.
So
Second.
moved.
And second.
Second, please.
All right.
The meeting is adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye-bye.